Okay, let me share my screen. All right, let's talk about alcohol. Once again, this slide bank is loaded with statistics. So you're going to be responsible to going back through and making sure that you see what the statistics are and make some decisions based on what we're seeing statistically and the effects of alcohol and coping strategies, especially coping strategies, because if and there'll be a couple of PDF in Canvas here, and you'll see it in the module with this material that expand just a little, studies that expand on this just a little bit, and I'll mention those as we go through. Okay, so once again, we're going to start with colleges, and lots of statistics on colleges. They follow this pretty closely. One of the big problems here is binge drinking, and here is the definition. So it's 5+ consecutive for men or 4 for women. Really, this is just about getting drunk or intoxicated. If you do more than that, at least twice that amount, that is called high intensity drinking, and that's becoming a more serious issue. There's some really good literature on this. The National Institute of Alcohol Abuse has a bunch of stuff out. This is one of their campaign posters that they put out as well. And you'll see the reference to the NIAA down there at the bottom of the slide. A lot of what's going on here with college students is listed here on this slide. So unstructured time, there's a lot of availability of alcohol, and it's marketed to that age group without regard to age. So there's a pretty good example of this around most college campuses. For example, if those of you who live in Tucson, just drive by the sports complexes, and you have the sports complexes, and you have apartments on the other side of the street, and then either below street level there's bars, or just down the road there's a ton of bars and restaurants that serve alcohol. So when they look at that, there's also some statistics out there that say Greek systems, like fraternities and sororities, colleges that have that, and that have prominent athletic programs like the U of A and others. I'm not picking on the U of A. I think it's great place, great institution, but they have issues as well. So incoming freshmen first 6 weeks. Matter of fact, that's such a big problem that the responsibility.org has put out a campaign, and here's their campaign, encouraging parents to have a conversation with their student. So college age statistics, I broke this down into death, assault, sexual assault, and you can see the list there. Pretty telling statistics here. I know a lot of times we see these things, we're like, oh, okay, those, people made some dumb mistakes. Here's the thing, right? The more often you do something, the greater the chance of being involved in something, bad in this case. So this doesn't, I haven't seen any documentation on first-time drinkers. Usually this is habitual. So anyway, there's your issues. I think academic problems is a real standout for me, because that's going to affect more under the radar types of things. We see students struggling and question why. Well, 1 in 4, 25% are reporting some sort of experience with academic issues. That's just reporting. So some of these other ones like deaths, assault, sexual assault, except sexual assault is underreported as well. But death and assault are typically reported, and we have pretty good statistics on that. Some of the other ones aren't. Of course, look at the other consequences there. Suicides, health problems, injuries, unsafe sexual behaviors, all under the influence of alcohol. They look at vandalism and statistics on that. So there's a lot going on here that's related to alcohol, some very serious, some maybe not so serious. But take a good look at those statistics and maybe think outside the box a little bit. Are there some policies that we need to change? But more importantly, are there some habits that we personally need to make some changes with? If you're not a drinker, that's awesome. What other coping strategies are you using then, and how can you use your influence to help other people? That's probably a good question to ask too. So physiologically, how does it help? How does alcohol affect us? Well, that's a fermentation process that goes through with sugar, basically. And any sugar we'll use, right? We can use any product. Barley's a big one, wheat, oats, rice in some cases. I had a brother that once brewed beer with strawberries. So anything that has a sugar content can be fermented. The hard liquors then go through another process called distillation. It gets distilled out, so it makes the fermented alcohol even more intense, and we call that a proof. So that's the percentage of alcohol in the beverage, the percentage of distilled alcohol. And there's a picture over here of Everclear. This is 190% proof. Well, if you want to know what that is, the proof is twice the percentage. So if it's 190 proof, it's 80% alcohol, which is really, really high and super, super dangerous. Just to give you an idea, most domestic beers here in the United States are somewhere between 3 and 5%. Beers outside or foreign beers tend to be somewhere between 5 and 8%. So if you're looking at 80% alcohol, that's going to get you intoxicated really, really quick and make you really, really sick if you take too much or any. Just some of the way that it's absorbed. About 20% is in the stomach, 80% in the small intestines. Anything in the stomach will slow down that absorption rate. Once it's absorbed into the circulatory system out of the intestine, then it has to go through the liver, and there is a process that occurs where the alcohol is metabolized, and some of the dangers of it are buffered so that we don't get the ill effects from the alcohol. It also is then metabolized in our brain, which causes some of those neurological effects that we'll talk about here a little later. Calorie-wise, there's about 7 calories per gram, which is a lot. Most carbohydrates are 4. You ferment them, turn it into alcohol, you have no ethanol, and that's 7 calories per gram. You can see why people get a beer belly, right? It's a lot of calories in a liquid form that get absorbed pretty quickly. Just to give you an idea, fats pack the highest caloric punch, and they're 9 calories per gram, but they take a lot longer to digest. So alcohol, with its fast absorption rate and its high caloric intake, create weight issues pretty quickly. So some of the effects we can be measured through blood alcohol concentrations. And a lot of that depends on the weight of the person, how much water they've consumed, the rate of consumption, the volume of consumption, and the concentration or the proof. So you can build a tolerance to alcohol as well, and that needs to be part of that. There's a link here to the thing called a drunk cowboy. This is a police cam that picked up a sheriff's department deputy doing a sobriety check on somebody has really built a tolerance to alcohol, apparently. It's kind of amusing, but it is a pretty good example of how we can build a tolerance to alcohol. We're going to talk a little bit more about blood alcohol concentrations here real quick. One of the most immediate effects is on the central nervous system, and it depresses it. So it slows things down. Our reaction speed, our logic sensors, speech, visual acuity, all of those things are depressed, so it slows it down. Alcohol is also a diuretic, so it'll dehydrate us. This is one of the big problems when we have a hangover. And it also affects at the cellular level, so we're not metabolizing as well. We're not using other things as well as a depressant. So, and because it's now dehydrating us as well, functionally, not only in our brain, but everywhere else, we're kind of not working as well. So here's some symptoms of a hangover, and there'll be a video here in a second that kind of talks about this a little bit as well. The cure really is about time and hydration. Coffee is an interesting one. We think that we should cure a hangover with coffee, but the thing is, coffee contains caffeine, which is also a diuretic. And so now you're increasing after alcohol is a diuretic, now you're putting caffeine on board. So probably your sports drinks with some electrolytes in it. What's this stuff? I'm sorry. Pedialyte. Pedialyte's a pretty good one too, because it's got low sugar content and a lot of electrolytes as well. So those are probably better for you than a cup of coffee. Please watch this video. You should be able to, if you download the slides, you should be able to see it. It's also on YouTube. You can look at it there. And it does a pretty good job of explaining some of the physiological processes that happen in the liver and why we get sick. Basically, it comes down to this. If you don't get a chance to watch the video, we run out of the enzyme that metabolizes alcohol. Therefore, the dangerous part of the alcohol gets into our bloodstream, makes us sick. So, and it really affects our brain. So that's the gist, but you should watch it. It's good. Some long-term effects, affects the nervous system. We have the brain never recovers from it. If you look up here, that's not cauliflower, that's a brain. Cross section of a brain. Left-hand side up there in that picture is a good looking brain. The right is kind of your pickled brain. Interesting factor, that right side is also the way it looks when you have some damage from multiple concussions. So when we're looking at people with multiple concussions and they harvest their brains after death, it kind of looks like the right. So interesting that brain damage looks like brain damage, whether it's caused by alcohol or impact. And some of the effects are the same too: loss of memory, loss of ability to use logic controls, math, language skills, visual acuity. All of those things are affected, and some can be permanent. The brain doesn't fix it. Sometimes it can reroute neurological signals, but if the damage is too extensive, you're done. You've lost that ability. We're going to talk more about cirrhosis of the liver and liver disease and alcohol's effect on that, and more of the cancers as well. And when we get into the cancer unit at the end of the semester, we'll talk more about cancers and alcohol. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorders are big. We used to just talk about fetal alcohol syndrome, but there's more to it than just fetal alcohol syndrome. There's a whole spectrum, as described here in this slide, that can affect people who have moms who consumed alcohol when they were, in their mom's womb. So if you're a mom, don't drink alcohol. Now, if you know somebody who does, then they can stop anytime, because brain development occurs throughout the pregnancy and they can stop and lessen chances, but there should be no drinking because it is the risk for fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and they're listed here. So make sure you read through them and you understand what they are. You can have one of these or multiple of these, and some of these in different concentrations. It's really hard to predict what's going to occur. It depends on when the brain is developing, what's developing at that moment, when alcohol is passed from mom to baby in the womb. So just don't. This is one of those that we can absolutely prevent, and we should. So behavioral effects of alcohol. You can read the statistic there. About 37 people in the United States die in drunk driving crashes. That's every day. That's about 1 every 39 minutes. In 2021, that was 13,384 people died in alcohol impaired driving accidents. And it was a 14% increase since 2020. So we changed the law because of alcohol related death increases, right? So we were at a 0.1 with our blood alcohol concentrations, and now most, if not every state, is now at 0.08 blood alcohol. So when you do a breathalyzer, that's what they're looking for. And so if you look at the chart down here, at 0.08, you can see where the line really makes a dramatic increase. At 0.10, it's already up at a 5% greater chance or likelihood of a traffic accident. The next slide, we'll see why that is. So you can see from that point, it really escalates pretty darn quickly until you get to about 2.0 or 0.2, where it's almost inevitable that you're going to have some sort of accident, whether you harm yourself or somebody else. Just depends on what you crash into. But that's why it's at 0.08, is because of this. So we're trying to change this statistic by changing the blood alcohol concentration. We've been up 14%. Now there may be reasons for that. The coping strategy for a lot of people for social issues, as you will read in the PDF if you decide to do that, is bin alcohol consumption, and it's really, really bad to do that, because we build a tolerance and you drink more, and then so there's so many more negative side effects eventually. So since 2020, I don't know, is it COVID related? I have no idea, but we do see a pretty 14% is a significant increase. So here is the blood alcohol concentration and what it does. So you can read through these here as well. This was this is created to give people an idea of what it means. What do those numbers mean? And of course, these are general statements, right? So if you have a tolerance to it, or maybe you have a low tolerance to it, these may fluctuate, right? So you may feel the effects of 0.08 at 0.05. So the point here is that there are predictable side effects of alcohol. These are the general ones, but you are, and what you and how you put yourself in that situation may change this. So don't think that, hey, I can go out one night and do 0.02 and be fine. You never know if 0.02 is going to be a 0.05 that night, just because you're fatigued or dehydrated or already stressed. So be careful. Don't use this as a predictive tool to try to circumvent the effect. There's always an effect with alcohol, and this one's pretty standard. So it's a good thing to read through. So when we look at alcohol abuse and alcoholism, there are a few theories here. Biologically, there are some new studies out for heredity or gene role. There's other information out there on the social and cultural influences of it, especially when it comes to consuming alcohol and to control cultural anxieties. Those are also in the PDF, so make sure that you look at those PDFs that are attached in Canvas here, right? It's right underneath where you found this slide video. We're going to look at some of the dangers of alcohol as we go through these. Just look, there's lots, these are busy slides, there's lots of statistics, so make sure you look through them more than once if you can, or pause the video. So liver disease is a big one, and cirrhosis is just part of that. And so you can see that there are a lot of deaths. We're looking at almost 50% of any liver disease has alcohol involved. When they look at cirrhosis, which is one particular disease, 50%. If they look at it in particular age groups, if you're a young person and you have cirrhosis, it's an 80% chance that you got that because of alcohol. And to get cirrhosis, you need to start really young. So looking at the age group of 25 to 34 that have cirrhosis of the liver, they started drinking way earlier, like in their teens, and their liver didn't do well with this. And they either drank really heavy or they were predisposed to this. And 80% is because of the alcohol that they consume. So you can read the next 2 paragraphs or 3, and there's liver disease, heart disease, depression, stroke. It goes on and on. I mean, alcohol is it's a bad deal. I'm not even sure, we tried to make it illegal for a while there, and there's reasons for it, in the 1920s, right? And it didn't work out so well. So we leave it up to individuals to try to control themselves. And obviously the statistics aren't lying. We're not doing a very good job as a population of controlling it. Families in the United States are looking at about 10.5% of US children under the age of 17 or younger. I read a statistics once that said 25% of all people know somebody or are affected by somebody that has an alcohol issue. I always ask this in class, and I ask that question: how many of you know somebody or have been affected by somebody with an alcohol problem? And it's like half. So, I did that. Statistics no longer in these slideshows because I just don't think it's right. And I can't find out there something, more current. So if you find it, you let me know, send it to me, and I'd love to put it in slide bank. But it really affects a lot of people. Me personally, I have an uncle who I loved very much, and he died of some alcohol-related incident, and we're still waiting for the police report to be released. For some reason, and it hasn't ever been released. We don't know exactly what happened, and it's awful. It's awful to know someone that you love passed away because of alcohol and not really understand why. So anyway, when we look at emergency room visits and deaths, here's some statistics on that. Just know that it's high. It's really high. And this is an issue. So once again, if we're talking about the cost if we're talking about medical costs and how they relate to the United States in a whole, right? So if we're not spending money on alcohol-related issues, we can then spend that money on other things. So when we say access to healthcare and all of those things that are important, research and development of new medicines, and well, there's only so much money to go around. And if we're spending on something that's really preventable, then that money can go somewhere else. So when we talk about those discrepancies that occur somewhere else in the medical field, here is one location that we could probably clean up some things and have a little extra money. We don't though. It just keeps rolling on. It gets worse and worse every year. Globally, we're looking at a 2.7 million deaths of males and about 374,000 deaths of female globally. This is pretty telling that obviously globally it's a male problem, a seriously male problem with alcohol abuse. Seventh leading risk factor for premature death globally. That's in 2016. I haven't been able to find a more current statistic on that, but that's pretty telling, and I would imagine it's going up. In 2018, the World Health Organization reported that there was 200 disease or injury-related health conditions because of alcoholism. That was in 2018. If you look at the United States, those numbers are going up. And so the World Health Organization, if they ever repeated this study, I think would find more. This is probably still pretty accurate. There's at least 200 diseases out there and these other effects as well. So globally, alcohol is a problem too. It's not just a United States issue. So when we talk about all those things, we have to talk about recovery. It really does take a group effort. You either use your family. Most will have to go to a recovery center or use a service like Alcoholics Anonymous. That group therapy is super important. It really is about learning new coping strategies in order to deal with either the anxiety or the other issues that may be controlling your life that you've got to get a handle on. And using alcohol or other substance abuse isn't the way to do it, right? That's a poor coping strategy. There are other more positive ones, and they take work, they take practice, and they take a lifelong practice. So recovery is pretty difficult, right? So we get relapses in the first 3 months. 60% of alcoholics relapse. So well over half relapse in the first 6 months, 3 months. So there you go, you guys. That's in a nutshell. I know I went pretty quickly, but please look back over it and get an idea of the statistics in there so you can take that quiz. And also, more importantly, that you can understand the patterns of what's going on with alcohol abuse. And if we made some changes socially when it came to alcohol, we would certainly have less disease, less innocent lives would be taken, probably more money for research and development on other more important things that we could probably address with the money that we would spend on alcohol issues. So there you go. That's alcohol. There's my 2 cents on it as well. If you have any questions, text or email me, and appreciate you watching this slide presentation.